course, I didn't have any of those features myself, and neither did the many biracial kids whose fathers were Black U.S. servicemen, who unfortunately were treated even worse than those of us who had white fathers. I was a mixture. I had a round face and an Asian nose, but double eyelids, sparing me the prospect of the now ubiquitous double eyelid surgery. I also had dark brown, wavy hair rather than the glossy, straight black curtain my cousins had. Unlike theirs, my hair tended to frizz up in the humid tropical air. My mom would try to control it with braids and hair clips until she finally just gave up and gave me short pixie haircuts instead. I hated being teased and feeling different. But in other ways, I was very lucky. Unlike so many American men who fathered half children like me, my dad didn't abandon my mom, my little brother, Tom, and me to fend for ourselves. He stayed and made us a family. My dad, Frank Duckworth, grew up in Winchester, Virginia, a small town nestled in the Shenandoah Valley at the foot of the Blue Ridge Mountains. He never knew his father, Joseph Duckworth, who was killed in a motorcycle accident in 1929, just 10 months after Frank was born. Suddenly left a widow at age 18, Frank's mother, Winnie, moved in with her parents in a home they also shared with her 2 unmarried aunts. So my dad grew up in a household of 4 women and his grandfather, all of them struggling to survive in the dark years of the Great Depression. Winchester is famous for 3 things. It was the town that changed hands the most during the Civil War, switching back and forth multiple times between the Union and Confederate sides. It's the hometown of country singer Patsy Cline, who is actually a classmate of my dad's at John Hanley High School, and it's the self-proclaimed apple capital of the United States. Surrounded by orchards, the town has celebrated the Shenandoah Apple Blossom Festival since 1924 with a big parade and the crowning of Queen Shenandoah. Frank's mother and grandparents had no money, but like many of their Winchester neighbors, they had apple trees in their yard. So during the Depression years, that was the one food the family always had plenty of. When my dad was hungry, which was often, they fed him every kind of apple product you can think of. Apple pie, apple crisp, apple butter, apple juice, apple cider. Apples saved Dad during his childhood, but he ended up hating them, and he wasn't too keen on sticking around in the apple capital either. So at age 15, he went to a local recruiter, lied about his age, and enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. The Marines trained my dad to become a commo guy, setting up and wiring communications equipment. According to him, he spent the last few months of World War II in Okinawa, where his job was to run from foxhole to foxhole with a roll of wire on his back, linking up battlefield telephone systems. I can't confirm that he was actually there during the war, as what military paperwork we have of his doesn't reflect that. Then again, that paperwork is full of so many mistakes and erasures, even his birth date was recorded differently on different documents. The one thing we do know is that early in his military career, he suffered a gash in his right arm, leaving him with an 8-inch-long scar that cut across his tattoo of the USMC Anchor, Globe, and Eagle. He was awarded a Purple Heart, and for the rest of his life, my mom says, he was jolted awake by nightmares of being back in action. The way my dad told it, after about 5 years of service, he left the Marine Corps and joined an Army program that helped enlisted troops finish college and become officers. He went to the University of Alabama for a year, but then was involuntarily recalled back to active duty, given a commission, and trained to be a signal officer. The Army sent him to France, where he spent much of the 1950s installing telephone lines and switches as part of the effort to rebuild Europe after the war. In the 1960s, as the U.S. ramped up its military involvement in Vietnam, he received orders to northern Thailand, where thousands of U.S. troops were sent in support of Air Force squadrons flying missions into the war zone. And that's where he fell in love, not only with my mother, but with life in Southeast Asia. My mom, Lamai, was in her mid-20s at the time and working in a souvenir shop she owned with her brother. Running a shop came naturally to them, as their parents had been shopkeepers in Shaozhou, China in the early part of the 20th century. But in the late 1930s, as Mao Zedong gained power, their parents feared that the rise of communism would lead to discrimination or worse for capitalists like them. So they sold their shop, converted their cash to gold, and set out for Thailand, by train, by foot, by boat, any way they could get there. When they left China, they had 2 children. One more would be born on the journey.